In a previous episode, I did a review of the ICA conference in Las Vegas, and most recently, I attended the ICANN conference in Puerto Rico. Like I said about the ICA conference, I think if you're serious about the domain industry, this is a conference you should attend. At these shows, there are a lot of different corporate vendors. When I decided to become a regular at these shows, it takes time to get to know the folks that attend. Daniel from DomainsBot is one of them. And DomainsBot provides an interesting service. They assist registrars with their search results, which is actually an extremely hard thing to do. And they also offer a suite of brand protection services amongst other data-related services. You know, it is always interesting to speak to people with a totally different point of view in the domain industry, and Daniel is a passionate, funny, and entertaining person that I've gotten to know over the past few years. He offers some insightful information and a great perspective from his vantage point in the industry. Hearing his story about DomainsBot with its humble beginnings, programming in his friend's parents' basement, his struggle with cancer, and what they are working on today leaves for a lengthy but great episode. As an aside, when I have a guest come, we on the video channel, and we talk for a few minutes, then begin. You know, and our conversation just kind of took off, and I decided mid-conversation to hit record, and it might seem like you're eavesdropping, and I probably break all the podcast rules, but sometimes the best conversations happen before I hit record or after I sign off, and I wanted you to hear it too. So thanks for listening, and enjoy. Right now, because this has been pretty good conversation so far, so let's just keep going.
The reality is that at the end of the day, these gatherings of the industry, and especially for such a niche industry like ours, are really the opportunity where all the industry come together. And we have this say in Italian, da cosa nasce cosa. From one thing is born another thing. And you can kind of apply to anything. But the funny thing is that it's actually used the most exactly to talk about the fact that when you have a connection with someone, from one thing it can lead to another thing. Da cosa nasce cosa. So the reality is that every time that you go to these conferences, you learn more about the industry. You learn more about your customers, your potential customers. It's really like the place where stuff happens. And honestly, it can. I don't want to sound like a FOMOist, fear of missing out, but I think that it's actually worth it. Look, I've been going to conferences for 20 years now. Actually, it's 2024, so I can say it with pride. It's been freaking 20 years. And at least 5, there have been some years that I've been doing 10 or 15 conferences, and I can count it on my hand, on the fingers of my hand, the ones that I can say, damn, I could have skipped this and nothing would have happened.
Yeah, there's always, and the funny thing is even the conferences sometimes that are lightly attended, you end up meeting like the best client of your life. And that when you meet that person or creates the best relationship that leads, you could also create like, the saying, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Have you ever heard of that?
Hang on, I've heard about it, but I don't remember exactly what it was about it.
Separation. Well, there's 6 degrees of separation, and then there's the whole thing of the Kevin Bacon theory, where with 6 degrees of separation, for example, you actually know the king, and you're connected to the king, and you're actually only well, actually, I'll give you one. You're actually connected to the President of the United States by me, my old boss. Her husband was the Secret Service for Donald Trump. He worked in the Secret Service for him. So how many degrees of separation are you from the President of the United States? And then the same, and then the same would go like, who does he know? Well, he knows the Pope. Right, and he knows.
I used to work for the Vatican. Actually, funny story.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I did.
What did you do then?
Well, the thing.
You definitely weren't an altar boy.
Sorry?
I said you weren't an altar boy, so
Actually,
what?
I'm gonna say something that is gonna get that's gonna really get a lot of heat on me. But here's the funny thing: I wasn't an altar boy, but I was actually a papa boy, as we were. As we were defined back in the 2000. When
Papa
Here's
boy.
the thing: in the year 2000, John Paul II actually had this jubilee that was a jubilee year, and this jubilee was mostly intended. It was il Giubileo dei Giovani, the jubilee of young people. So during that summer, the summer of the year 2000, Rome received like 2 million young people from all around the world, and I studied in a Catholic school, and obviously, I speak English and Italian and Spanish since I was a kid. So obviously, I was approached by one of the teachers saying, "Hey, would you be interested in helping us out?" And obviously, when they explained to me that in late June, mid July, 350 boys and girls from Sweden, Denmark, and Norway were actually going to be hosted at my house, obviously, 18-year-old me obviously said, "Absolutely, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help."
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
and
sure.
I
Bring it
and
on.
I ended up actually helping a lot with the organization, and we used to go around with a blue cap and a badge. And during that week, what's really funny is that we owned the Eternal City. We owned it. Like
Yeah.
there was so much crazy stuff happening because you see, when you receive 2 million people, you got to think about a lot of things. Like, okay, I'm hosting 500 people in a school. Where are they going to sleep? Where are they going to eat? What are we going to feed them? The
Yeah.
organizational part was much more complex than you may think. It was not just, okay, here's the place. Is that you got to take care of a lot of things. But it was an amazing experience, actually. And during that year, during those 2 weeks, I think in particular, it was kind of the culmination of it. I remember that practically, with the blue cap and a badge, you can do whatever the hell you wanted and you were gonna get away with it. Like I
Do
remember,
you still have the blue cap and the
I
badge?
might actually still have it. I surely have the badge in a box in my house in Rome. I sh-
You should wear that to
oh
ICANN
my God, that would be actually
the
quite.
next
That
conference.
would be quite funny.
That would actually be great. That'd
That
get
would
some
actually be
attention.
quite funny. I'm gonna look for it next time. Next time I'm in Rome, I'm gonna look for it. Actually,
Yeah. So,
oh sorry, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead. Talking about the
No,
badge.
no. I just wanted to say that one of the trophies that I actually brought back from Colombia last time that I was in Italy. I'm actually
Yeah.
gonna show it to you. Is actually
Okay.
that news. Hang on. You can barely see it because it gets blurred, but that newspaper that is actually hanging on the wall, that is actually the
Okay.
newspaper of the most important sport newspaper in Italy, Il Corriere dello Sport. The next day after that, we won the World Cup in 2006.
And you weren't excited about that, were you, when
No,
Italy won it?
absolutely.
No,
It, wa-
no,
it was it
not at
was
all.
like nothing. The stuff that I saw that night, my friend. The stuff that I saw
Oh yeah.
happening that night was just bananas. Like people just bathing in the fountains of Rome. I was actually watching the match in the Circo Maximo, and
Yeah.
because the mayor put some maxi screens, and there were like 350 people, 350,000 people down there watching the final against France, and I remember that even if, let's say, that the event ended at midnight, I couldn't literally physically get home before like 3 or 4 a.m. Just because
Hmm.
there was so many people on the street, and I saw people just, oh yeah, that's a fountain from the 1600s, but we won the World Cup. Who cares? And they would just throw themselves because it was really hot. It was July, so
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was absolutely crazy.
And there's no history between France and Italy
No,
either.
absolutely.
Oh,
We
none, no,
go
not at
we go
all.
in
So,
unison in as one people with mutual love for our, as we call them, the Transalpine cousins. They are our cousins, and called i cugini Transalpini because they are at the other side of the Alps.
uh-huh. Okay. That's how it works. So you're born and bred, grew up in Rome,
Actually,
right?
I was technically born in Colombia because my mom is Colombian and my dad is Italian. Although my mom lived
Okay.
in Italy for like 50 something years, or actually maybe even more. But yeah, but I did grow up in Italy, studied in there, and everything until 5 years ago that I moved back.
Got it. All right. So this is a little backwards for our normal episode and our normal listeners and those that were tuning in. We were actually talking about um, before we started to record, just us and going on the conference circuit. And when I worked at Uniregistry, I knew of Daniel, and I think we probably shook hands and said hello a few times. But when I left
Yep.
Uniregistry and I went on my own and started my own business, I had a more formal business conversation with Daniel at ICANN in Montreal,
Yes, I remember that.
and his and his business partner Emiliano. And so I'm going to read you a little bit of his bio to give you some background, and then we're going to talk about why I think he's a great fit for this show, and we're going to get into some really interesting stuff. So Daniel Ruzzini Mejia, did I pronounce your last name properly?
Mejia. It's just because
No,
it's Spanish J,
Mejia.
but yeah.
Mejia.
Hmm.
How about that? Is that better?
That
Or
was
I'm not
actually
even going to
much
attempt to
better.
say it again. That is much better. I'm getting there. All right. We'll work on it when I come visit. You are a successful entrepreneur and business leader with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. You are the founder and chief strategy officer of DomainsBot. He has played a pivotal role in shaping the company's growth and direction. What DomainsBot does, and I think it does a lot more than says this. So we're going to get into it. Empowers online companies with data to better understand their customers and markets, enabling them to act on insights that will make their customers happier and businesses stronger. You're fluent in English, Italian, Spanish, and you currently reside in Colombia with your family, where you enjoy downtime between business travel and contributing to the country's growing technology community. And you have how many cows?
I have about, well, actually, technically they're my mom's, but we have around 100 cows, like 90 something.
100 cows.
Yeah.
Have you ever branded a cow?
I have vaccinated them though.
You vaccinated
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah,
And believe me, giving an injection to a cow is much harder than you think.
I'm sure. um, your partner in the business is Emiliano
Pasqualetti.
Pasqualetti. And the real specialties of the company that I understand there are is domain search, domain suggestion technology, um, business intelligence services that used to be called Pandalytics, because I remember you gave me a demo of that a long time ago, and that helps spot threats and opportunity from market trends. You can understand your own customers from that.
Correct.
Um, helps with marketing or sales initiatives as well through data. You can identify M&A opportunities. You also have a brand protection product
Correct. Brand
that can
monitoring
help get
service.
people in a threat monitoring service. Yeah, and it allows you to get visibility on on companies' CCTLD registrations, extended visibility over content on homepages of any domain name,
Correct.
and you're obviously using machine learning. And and you've been doing this for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I asked you for your bio and you gave me this paragraph. It was a little longer, but I cut it back a little bit, but you didn't really have much other experience than DomainsBot on there. So have you been doing DomainsBot for the last almost 20 years and been in the
Yes.
domain business this entire time?
Yes, and also you have to consider something. DomainsBot has been the company that I've only worked in my entire professional life.
Are you kidding? It's your
Absolutely.
first job.
Man, I
From
created
a
a company
Vatican?
that I was 17.
Okay.
So when we started kind of dealing with the domain names, Max Aralli and I, we started that we were literally 17. It was our last year of high school.
Uh-huh.
We started. It all started very, cat oddly in a way, because and I'm not exaggerating, this is exactly how it went. Max and I were in front of a computer. I remember he had a very good internet connection back in the day, which was in ISDN connection. So again, we're talking late 90s. And
Oh yeah.
at some point, we stumble upon a page, which was we discovered it later being was it called Domain Finder or something like that from VeriSign, that said this domain name is for sale or something like that. And I remember that I turned around, I looked Max straight into the eyes, and I said, "What the hell is a domain name, man?" And he said, "I have no clue. Let's figure it out." And 20 something years later, I'm here talking to you. Well, a lot has happened in between, but yeah, that's actually really how we got into domain names. We just got passionate about it. Max and I always had a nick for doing things, doing something in the business world since we were really small. In fact, when we started, kind of with a much more structured website, I think that we were really 18, something like that. I think that I wasn't even 19 back in the day, and we used to write the code ourselves. By the way,
How did you learn code? You said you learned, like, people just say, "Oh, and then I wrote code," but like you were 19. So how did you learn how to write code? Just taught
So I
yourself? Read it on a
used
serial
I
box?
used a very very interesting technique, which is just bang your head in front of the monitor to the monitor until it works. And the reason why I say this, because I remember that back in the day, and again we're talking late 90s, first 2000s, I was just getting into writing maybe some basic HTML or some PHP code back in the day, and obviously you didn't have the access to knowledge that you have today. That you
Mhm.
might have all a trillion courses on all of this. So you just would go to the PHP documentation and just try to make it work and press F5 and refresh that page until the thing that you wanted it to appear, it does appear. um,
Yeah.
but besides, the funny thing was, because we were studying, mostly, for example, during the weekends, Mac's parents used to go to they had a house in the mountains and one on the seaside. So Max and I would stay in Rome and just pull a couple of all-nighters there, um, to try to make it work. But it was really a time of discovery. It was a time of really trying to understand as much as possible. And again, we didn't have, let's say, a formal preparation to what we were doing, but we really had to learn it through experience. And to some
Mhm.
extent, I still do. I still
Yeah.
do. One of the nicest things that anyone has ever told me was, oddly enough, said by Emiliano, which in the 20 years that we have known each other might have said four nice things about me. Um, but no, because he's very severe in his judgment, but he's very truthful. He's very
Yeah.
sincere. And recently he said, you know, I can say a lot of things about, we were in an internal meeting, and he say, at least I have to give the something to Daniel. Daniel is not a man of thinking. He's a man of action. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we had to do in these 20 years. There's really It's really been a path of discovery, of applying our own intuition, of applying our own creativity in a way to the things that we're presenting in front of us. Even the whole Pandalytics and the whole data actually was the result of a very interesting conversation I had with a registrar back at the ICANN meeting in Brussels. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I think it was maybe 2011 or something like that. And and I was talking to a registrar, and to a person who's a registrar, and I asked him, just out of curiosity, the following question. I said, "How many domain names do you have under management?" And the person told me X million. So I turned around. I remember we were actually having a glass of wine during music night, when there was music night back in the good old days of the ICANN meetings. And so I turned
I
around.
never went to a music night.
Oh,
What
sorry.
are those? What's a music night? What
So
was
long
that?
time ago at ICANN meetings, there was this thing called Music Night, where the whole community would come together, and there was gonna be like, people from the industry playing. Roberto
Oh,
Gaetano, Andrei Kolesnikov, all of them would actually play music, and there was also a kind of a karaoke, like people from the industry would sing, which obviously.
yeah.
it might sound bad, but for example, Margarita from .cl, she has one of the most amazing voices I have heard.
Is she really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
absolutely.
that.
Margarita, can absolutely, knock your socks off when it comes to singing. She has an amazing voice. It's one of my memories from the music nights. Everybody was looking forward to actually hearing her sing. Um, or Roberto with the saxophone. Roberto plays the sax like nobody's business, and
Yeah.
but nevertheless. So during that music night, I'm talking with this person, and after that he tells me the number of domain name under management, which is kind of an indicator that everybody knows, right? It's like it's not no one's secret. And then I turn around and I ask him, but do you know what people do with these domain names? What do they talk about? Do they sell shoes? Do they sell ice cream? Are they porn websites? What is it? And he said, I have no clue. And that got me thinking because I started asking myself, how is that possible? That registrars and registries, they're really the foundation of the internet, and they have no clue what's happening at the higher floors. That's an important part. So I started studying, trying to figure out as many things as possible, let's say, about domain names, how they used, and I remember that the reason why it was actually called Pandalytics is because in the industry everybody knows me as Panda. To the point, I don't know if I told you this, that I receive business emails, like serious business emails, where the body of the email is completely legitimate business staff that actually starts,
Yeah.
"Hey Panda, uh, it all started in 2008 because Francesco Cetraro, he's one of my closest friends. We actually met in the industry. One night, I think we were in LA at an ICANN meeting, and I was kind of lost in my thoughts, making a very panda-like face. And he turns around and he says, "You know what, dude? I just noticed something. You really look like a panda." And since that there was a bunch of people around that they
And
started
that's
looking
it.
at me, they all agreed, and at that moment there was really not that much that I could do. Like I said, I can
Totally.
fight it all day long, or just own it. So I said, okay, let's make it a panda. So,
So then you call it Pandalytics.
but no, but there's a reason actually. It's not because of
Okay.
egotistical, leniencies. Is
I always thought it was called Panda because of the Panda update with Google, and it had something to do with the tech in that. That was always what I thought, but I never
you're
bothered to
looking
ask.
at the
That
panda in
you're mug.
Pandalytics.
You're ugly. Yeah, you're looking at it.
My ugly face is the reason. No,
Your ugly mug. Yeah.
the reason actually was much more technical. While I was kind of trying to put together the prototype and all the different pieces of code that it needed for me to validate, I was actually pushing into our company's repository. And one of the
Okay.
things that I used to do back in the day was to put Panda as a prefix on all these different pieces of code, so my tech team would know that that's actually my stuff. They don't have to worry about it. That just might be something that it doesn't even go to production. It was just me tinkering. So
Yeah.
one night I was I think it was maybe 1 a.m. or something. I was in Rome alone in my house, and it was just me sitting in front of the keyboard, and I had a glass of white wine next to me, and I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna try to lay down kind of a structure of this. And I opened the software that I used to kind of write very basic code back in the day. And the first thing that the software asks you is, what is the name of the project? So I started thinking, I have to put Panda so the guys know that that's not like production stuff, that's just me. And in the beginning I wanted to call it DomainsBot Analytics, even if it was the most boring name ever produced. So at that
Yeah.
point I said, well, Panda Analytics, I just smashed them together, and the rest is history.
And then you guys changed the name. Now you're calling it your Business Intelligence Service,
Well, the
formerly
thing
known as
is that it's
Pandalytics.
actually different from Pandalytics. This is
Oh, it
actually a
is.
very
Okay.
important difference. You see, Pandalytics at the very beginning was actually, and it still is, a data access tool. What you do is that if you have a question in your mind? Like, I wonder if there are any dot banana domain names registered in Indonesia that are hosted at Stargate Technologies. Just making a
Yeah.
weird example,
Yeah.
with an SSL and email activated. That question, Pandalytics helps you translate it into a query that actually goes to
Yeah.
this ginormous database that actually fits that system. The business intelligence tool, which is Insights, is different because it allows you to have the bird eye view, to look at trends. It allows you to make queries, that's for sure. But the thing is that you can visualize in a different way. While Pandalytics is, first of all, a much easier, much lower level type
Hmm.
of service, because obviously the business intelligence tool, it needs a little bit of getting used to, although it's very intuitive for all compared to all the other business intelligence tools out there. But it's really an analysis at a different level. You're getting the data. With Pandalytics, you are getting the data. You are getting some visualizations. But when it comes to that granularity, to really getting all the different shades that the data can talk to you about, that's why it's called business intelligence, because it's really two different purposes in a way. They are all coming from the same data set, but it's the way that you look at it that it's actually different.
Okay. Got it. So that's one part of your business.
It
And then the other part is domain search and domain suggestions,
correct.
right? So by the sound of it, Pandalytics came first,
Actually came
right?
second because it was around
That came
2011.
second.
The domain suggestion started in 2004.
Okay, so you thought, okay, I went to a registrar to register a domain name. The results of the search, which just as a side,
Mm-hmm.
search is a very hard thing to do for a company. Like, programmers can build all kinds of different things, but search and search suggestion in general, I've been told by multiple developers, it is a serious pain in the
It
ass.
is. It is.
And people don't realize what a pain in the ass it is. And I don't know if you can mention it, but a lot of registrars that people might search on are using this product, which is providing search results and suggestions to users at the registrar level because they don't want to deal with it themselves. And you've created this product, but you started it in
And
2004.
four, yes.
So you went in your first business where you didn't know what a domain name was, and now you're going to use domain names and provide search results, which again is a pain in the ass, and a self-taught developer. And your other friend, your colleague Max, is his name. You
Yeah, we
said.
also had other developers back in the day, actually, that we gathered. Like, obviously, I've always been more focused on the conceptualization of a product. If I can kind of build it or program it, even if it's just a kind of a scratchy thing, like just something out there to test it out, I'm obviously gonna do it. But back in the day, especially when we started with domain suggestion, I didn't take care directly of the development. At that moment, I was already more theorizing what were the features or what were the characteristics or how to get to relevant suggestions, because
Mm-hmm.
especially in 2004, we didn't have access to the same instruments that we have today, and that was actually the challenge. Nowadays, you have AI, you have machine learning, but even the compute capabilities of a server actually have increased a millionfold. So obviously, back in that day, doing that, it was way harder. And
Well, thinking back to 2004, though, like even if you went to Google in 2004 and let's say you typed in Facebook wrong, it would give you the suggestion of, did you mean this?
mhm,
Which it still does from time to time,
mhm,
right?
correct.
But like that was very rudimentary. Now it just gives you the result. It just guesses that you know what it is, and then it kind of fixes it for you at this
Absolutely,
point.
absolutely. But back in the day, obviously, all these things were literally happening. Like, all the technologies and all the things that today we give it for granted were absolutely, we're absolutely just getting started. I remember, for example, that one of the things with the name suggestion is that everyone, when it comes to domain suggestion and domain search, although they are very similar, they are conceptually very different on how you get there. Because one thing is applying ways to search into a predetermined database. For example,
Hmm.
an inventory, for example, right? It could be an aftermarket inventory. And another thing is actually telling the system you have to create new domain names from scratch. That obviously in that case is not searching, but is coming up with new strings that then you have to filter and make sure they're still available. And back in the day, even if the zone file contained maybe 10 million domain names or something like that, it was obviously much smaller than it is today. One of the biggest challenges is, okay, of all the strings that I have generated, that the system have generated with all the calculations and the semantics and all of that, okay, how do I actually make to check that these suggestions are still available? For example, checking them against the zone file without taking 25 minutes, because obviously these are all
Yeah.
things that need to be. I remember that we were aiming at replying in really really few milliseconds. So
Yeah.
the challenges were, okay, first, how do we revolutionize the way that actually people is showing up alternatives to customers? So we had to get into semantics. We had to get into really trying to understand what the domain name is about, and trying to gather the most relevant keywords, third terms, related terms that actually were relevant to what the customer was looking, and how do we teach the system how to assemble them together? Because you see, most of the times you think about domain name as a string, but the reality is that actually a domain name can contain multiple keywords, and obviously it's how you put how you ensemble these keywords together that makes a good domain name and a bad domain name. And obviously we said,
Yeah.
okay, if we have to get into this crazy plan, we either go big or go home. So we had to really rethink it from scratch.
So how do you teach? You talk about machine learning and things like that, but like, how would you? And obviously, I was at before this podcast here. I was looking into what Google uses, and I watched a video on it. Google actually has a video that explains how their search works. Now, obviously, they're not giving away anything of any substance, but it's interesting the key points that they show. But it still blows my mind that if, for example, I search and I'm like a florist. So if I search flowers now, flowers you're going to look at and you're going to say, okay, in all these random GTLDs, there's probably the word flowers is available for registration. However, not that there's anything wrong with the extension, but if flowers.hiphop is available, it's probably not a great one for that person.
Correct.
It probably isn't a great fit. If it was music, different story. So you got to weed those out, no pun intended.
No, no,
But then
that's a good one
but
actually.
then a florist, the florist is thinking flowers, florist, tulips, roses, like the higher converting words that you could put into a brandable, like you call a company red tulip, or pink roses, or something, or you could be punny. Like we sold the name. Remember, obviously the movie Forrest Gump.
Yeah,
Okay, Frank, we sold the domain at University. I'll never forget. It's called Florist Gump. Right, I thought it was like a funny name, and it's always stuck with me as a good brand.
that's
So
actually
I'm
that's
saying, like,
actually a nice
how
one.
I think it's a good brand, right? And I still remember it to this day from like 10 years ago. But like what I'm saying though is that how are you with all the GTLDs out there, with all the CCTLDs out there, with .com and the availabilities of different, or .info and .everything else. How are you taking somebody and providing actually relevant results that aren't just type in flowers, just give them anything with a flower in it, it's trash. Like that's what I see on certain, like if I built my own brokerage website with search, it would just be totally keyword and you type in flower and anything with the
And
word
you would get
flower in it
everything that gets
comes
flower.
up and it's shit and it sucks.
So,
Like how do you guys do that?
so I remember it was the ICANN meeting in Beijing. It was
What
2013.
year was that? 2013.
So it
Okay, we were
was
just children
really
then.
when new GTLDs were really popping into existence.
Yep.
That I actually said to someone, I said, you know what? I think that there's gonna be a new girl that is gonna rule the house here, talking about the domain name industry. And that girl is relevancy.
Yeah.
Because you see, with the inflation of availability, because obviously now you have a lot of TLDs, and it's a great thing that people have now choices, because
Yeah.
with only .com at some point the domain names were starting to get a little bigger, a little big. Um, at that point, it's all about the relevance. Uh, the way that we do it, it's first of all personalizing at a registrar level, because no two registrars are alike. So every
Mm-hmm.
registrar has its own set of parameters, weights, targets of what are the most relevant, and then it's all about how you merge the term with the TLD. So by knowing at a semantic level if flowers goes better with shop rather than I don't know, plumbing. Again, nothing wrong with plumbing, absolutely. The
Yeah.
thing is that at that point, it's important to know how you put them together, because when in UGTLD brings value to the table, that's actually how you're contributing to the internet, to the registry, to the registrar, and to the end user. Because now it's just not yet another string, but that string is actually bringing value to the message that I want to convey. Whether I sell flowers, I'm a plumber, I'm an astrophysicist, or I
Yeah.
just have a blog about my travels. So
Yeah.
it's in the moment that you take into account the semantic part, the meaning, what that TLDs bring into the table, that actually you can try to um, generate more relevant suggestion. Uh, Mostly we use semantics as much as possible. Then it's understanding and having this self improving algorithm that actually based on usage is gonna understand. To make you an example, maybe dot photo, it's actually much more relevant from a category of the people, let's say for example photographist, but or sorry, a photographer, rather than camera, that might be always talking about photography, but more centered towards, for example, talking more about cameras. So
Mm-hmm.
like having these type of things, and obviously, these what's interesting about this is the fact that when you think it on an abstract level, it sounds easy. The problem is this doing it with a domain name that can be barely two keywords when you have absolute no context in a vacuum is actually much harder than it seems. Or
Yeah.
let me put it this way, is an imperfect science, meaning that at least so far, even us, sometimes, can provide results that are not perfect. But because, again, since we're dealing with language, it's really hard to reach perfection.
Yeah. So now let's get into the weeds of it, though.
Okay.
Right. So
Always referencing to the
you
florist that we were talking
the
about
weeds and the
before.
florist, yes, right back. Right. So when you get into search and the search results you're
Mm-hmm.
providing, right, and someone comes in and they're searching, they search bostonplumber.com, and that name is already registered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can't be had. Now, registrars have the option to say, click here for the who is. This domain isn't available. They always say, is this your domain name? Transfer it
Yes.
in. Or the service we provide, we ask if they want to hire like saw.com brokerage or another brokerage, or pay for a buy service to do
Mm-hmm.
that. Or, try these other options. So then they put out like, results from CETO MLS or Afternic DLS or whatever that are .com names. Now, with that, you're pulling from those and putting those results in there, right? Based on, are you looking at just the keywords and making a decision, or are you kind of also getting their location? Are you getting time of day? Are you getting other things like that are important to help you decide, or is that not as important in your
So
results?
considering that I cannot get too much into the details, But one thing that I can tell you though is absolutely the parameters, and there are additional parameters. Geolocation actually is
Okay.
one of them. Help to further customize, because at the end of the day, what you really want to try to do as a registrar is to get to showing to the end user something that is relevant to him. So if
Yeah.
Boston Flowers is not available, or Flowers.Boston is not available, at that point you got to ask yourself, okay, what's out there, in terms of what I can either generate or search in the aftermarket, that has to be in the kind of in the limit of what is addition, what is close to
Yeah.
to that meaning. So something that if I was a florist in Boston, what would I use? Right? And
Yeah.
that entails analyzing the keywords, so splitting the keywords up, splitting the domain names into keywords. That is the first step. And then saying, okay, if this keyword represents flowers, what are the concepts? What are the keywords that are closest to that? Try to connect them together, and obviously connect them with variations. So saying, can I use this as an adjective? Can I use this as a pronoun? As a noun? All of these techniques to create the wider list possible, and then saying, okay, I have generated, let's say, 10,000 names. What is actually available? And then you got to filter them out, obviously, because
And this is all happening in how many milliseconds and then sent to the registrar to be displayed to the user?
less than 100. I
Jesus.
know that you see, that's why I tell you that today is actually given for granted because technology has advanced so much. But in hindsight, looking back in 2004, we were really trying to get blood out of a bead, as we say in Italy, getting blood out of a rock, because the technical challenges, of even understanding, is this even fathomable, back in the day, were really big. And don't forget, we were, you know, six Italian boys in an office not far from the Vatican competing versus American companies, and even giants of the industry.
How did you get your funding, kind of
We
going
we
after these things?
didn't. We didn't. We just built it. We just built it because Max and I used to have a business that was providing, which would, by the way, this actually is an interesting story, that our original name was not DomainsBot. DomainsBot was actually our biggest competitor in 2001. Because back in the day, Max and I had a business called The Local Who Is, which was providing expiring domain names. We built a set of services around the concept of expiring domain names so people could
Okay.
snap them out. And
Hmm.
in 2001, we were competing with DomainsBot for the space for the market, and DomainsBot was originally created by a guy in Canada, but he was by himself and he was in college. Max and I were in uni, and but it was the two of us, plus we actually got a programmer to help us out. So we started competing, and then in 2002 I get sick. In June of 2002, I actually get diagnosed with cancer, and
Oh, wow.
I got shipped to the US for treatment. And in July of 2002, this is actually a very funny story. So the situation was actually not looking great, and my mom calls Max, which I've known since I was 5. And I practically grew up in his house, and says, "Dude, look, the picture is not looking great." I was in New York, and Max says, "Okay, I'm coming over." And 48 hours later, Max was in New York. And again, you know, it's really good and it's really easy when you think today's world, and I'm 40, but Max was 20, and it was in 2002. It was a
It's a lot
different,
of money.
was a lot of money, and it wasn't even that
I
easy.
know.
It's not something that you could say, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm just gonna.
I had to get a visa.
No,
You know,
thank God, Italians never needed a
no
visa
visa.
for the U.S.
Yeah.
But again, it was a different world. So
But it goes to show you though what a good friend he is or was to come. It doesn't even matter if the flight was free. It doesn't matter. It's just the fact that he's willing to put his life aside and come visit his friend and make him feel better. And I think
look,
that's
I'm
the
only
most important part.
child, but one thing that I can tell you is that throughout my youth, if I can tell you what is the closest thing that I have to a brother is actually Max, because again, I literally grew up in his house. There was actually our first office back in 2002 was actually Max's basement. Max's
Okay.
house basement. So, so the thing is that Max shows up, and while I was actually sick, he was talking to the guy that created DomainsBot, because as I said, he was in college, he was by himself, it was really hard for him. Um, for him to keep things running by being in college. So he actually kind of gave us the main spot. So I was in a hospital bed, highly medicated, and Max just storms into a room one afternoon and says, "Dude, sign this." And I'm like, "Dude," and I was like practically more asleep than anything. It says, "Dude, what is this?" And I was like, "No, no, we're just getting the main spot." And I'm like, what? So yeah, sign here. And then like a few minutes later, I kind of fall asleep because, as I said, I was in immense pain, so they were giving me.
It was like an angel flying in and flying out.
Dude, you are not far from the truth. So so when I got better and I go back home, we merged the two things together. We kept with the domain name expiring list business. We kept going. To be honest with you, on a more personal note, it was really DomainsBot in a way kind of saved my life for a reason. Um, I came back in November of 2002 in Rome after my surgery that I had in New York, 6 cycles of chemo. I just had to do
Wow.
some kind of rinsing chemo when I was in Rome, but it was much lighter. And when I came back, when I arrived in Rome, I felt that I was actually flying, 24, 30 centimeters from the ground, because obviously, I got my life back, right? And I was so happy. I
Yeah.
was so happy to be home, to be with my friends, and all of that. Now, oddly enough, this was November 2002. Um, March 2003, I'm kind of trying to get back to my life. Obviously after chemo and all of this, and I get into a huge existential crisis. And I remember that one day I was with Max, and I told him, you know what? The problem is that I feel that I got back this device that is full of buttons, and but no one gave me the instruction manual, and that device is my life. For almost a
Hmm.
year, I was so focused, like my life purpose was literally saving my own ass, that now that I did, I didn't know what to do with it or how to get to that. So Max, in his infinite wisdom, turns around and says, "Dude, we have DomainsBot. You can focus on it." And I did, and it kind of how this whole thing happened. So Max and I founded the new DomainsBot, the domain suggestion, and all of this with the money that we were making and we were saving from the other business that we kept for a while. We had expired domains for .com for a while, because obviously at that point we kind of had to do the switcheroo of the different brands and businesses,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's kind of how the whole thing started, and it was
So where's Max now?
so Max is a doctor. Max is an
Hmm.
otorhinolaryngologist. He lives in Rome, married with a beautiful daughter. He's a little older than mine, and he's still partially involved at DomainsBot. But then, you know, 2000, put it 2002, 2003, you know, life gave me another brother. Because again, my parents were kind of lazy, or as I always joke, when you do not repeat a masterpiece. So
Yeah, or they learn their
oh,
lesson.
they learned their lesson. I would say that is more the second in my case. But the thing is that then life gave me my second brother, which is Emiliano.
Yeah.
Emiliano arrived when we were just starting with the domain suggestion thing, and he has been the other half of the sky, let's say for DomainsBot, and
Hmm.
he has obviously become a brother to me, and we have this very odd dynamic. Like we used to be really confrontational and to have a very kind of I wouldn't say bad because it's never been bad, but a very strong, at a confrontation level relationship when we both living in Rome and we were both working in the same office. And we just realized that the best thing for us was just to have an ocean apart from each other because since he lives in Turkey and I live in Colombia, we have been working like freaking clockwork, we have been really you know really being two sides of the same coin. And the good thing is that we complete each other quite well,
So you're very opposite people, you're
exactly.
saying.
But
Yeah.
with the fact that we have very aligned goals, and with the fact that we accept our weaknesses, like
Yeah.
for example, one of the smartest human beings that I have ever encountered in my life, obviously after you, Jeff, is our CTO, Javier. He's
Hmm.
from Argentina. He's currently living in Madrid. He's by far one of the smartest people I've ever encountered in my life. That guy sees things and he has the analytical capability that I'm pretty sure that not even AI will ever even come close to. Believe me, it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
I cannot state enough how much I admire that guy. He's very systematical. He's very methodical, as a good CTO has to be, right? And and
Hmm.
and during that conversation where Emiliano said Danny's a man of action, I remember that Javier was saying, okay, but this process we need to document it. And I remember that Emiliano stopped him and said, you know what? I'm not gonna even ask Daniel to write it down. I'm not gonna is Daniel. Besides, I suck at writing in every language I speak. As
Yeah.
you can see, I'm a little bit better at talking just because I do it a lot, but because I really talk a lot. But rather than that, the thing is that we now got to the point that we understand each other's weaknesses, and we said, okay, I'm gonna give you strength in that specific weaknesses because I am the other side of the coin, and that creates a bond that really transcend this is my area of expertise. It's really at a much deeper level,
You, you know what's interesting about that though, and what you're saying is that um, it takes a lot for people like yourself and me to realize and then admit your weaknesses and then find somebody else that also feels the same way and can admit their own weaknesses and then respect both of those and you guys work together in that way, right? And
It took
for
us
my
a lot,
business,
huh? It took us a lot, and it took us taking my weaknesses and for Emiliano to slap them in my face as hard as he could, and for me to actually take his weaknesses and just shove them in his face, but with always this honesty. You can say a lot of
yeah.
things about Emiliano Pasqualetti, and the most of those things might be true. But if there's one thing that you can say about him, is that if he tells you something, is because that's what he really thinks. He says things as they are, and believe me, that's really important.
Is that an Italian thing? Because I think I have that. I do that too, and sometimes it's not always the best thing to do.
Here's the thing: is that I always joke, especially because Colombians tend to be exaggeratedly polite, and
Yeah.
in fact, I always joke with people here saying if Colombians were just a little bit rude, the GDP of this country would grow by 8% overnight. But the funny thing is that you need to do it to the person that you know is willing to accept it. You know, to
Yeah.
to cut the crap, it takes two. It's not just you that cut the crap. It needs to be two. Like I need you to be truthful, and I need to listen, like carefully. That's how you
Yeah.
how you make it. That's how you make it work.
Yeah.
And again, I know that
Yeah.
that we have this because sometimes when I get into this type of discussions, this is like, damn it, am I talking about my business partner or my wife? But
Well, you share sometimes the same amount of time and you travel just as much with them
here's the
and
funny thing.
confide in him with problems and other
I have
issues,
known
right?
Emiliano for longer than I've known my wife. I've known my wife for 11 years and I've known Emiliano for 21. So this kind of tells you
Absolutely.
and also you one important thing actually at a human level is that when you have 20 years of sharing the path of your life with someone, you have been through so much. We have seen each other at the strongest and at the weakest. You know, in the major, Emiliano saw me border life dying on a hospital bed. And I've seen Emiliano in his weakest moments in his life, even if it's not even professionally, that actually creates a channel of communication of truth and of trust that nowadays he can even call me names as much as he wants, and I know what he means. And I do the same with him, you know. And I do the same with him, and that actually is what make a business relationship last for 20 years. And also the
I
fact that
agree.
there's an ocean between us, so we kind of limited
Yeah, and the
physical
social
interaction
media.
to a minimum.
So let's talk a little bit more about search
Yes, sorry I
so
opened
people
this
understand what
very
you guys do.
personal.
No, I love it because I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a very abridged version of our business or my business is that I started my business and I started my business with a person named Amanda Waltz, and Amanda is another domain broker, and she is one of the best domain brokers in the business, and we work together, and I think we had different aspirations of where we wanted to take the business and what we wanted and different goals. And unfortunately, you guys have stuck together, but we parted ways 2 summers
Hmm.
ago. And after that happened, months later, I started talking to the CEO of a name silo called Kristaps
Hmm.
Ronka, and they had a sales platform that name lot that I had my eye on. It's kind of like I wanted to build this into more of like a marketplace and a brokerage and self brokerage and all these things. And one of the areas I was totally struggling with is development because I'm more of the business development guy. I'm the salesperson. I'm the one with the ideas. If I turn my screen, I've got it's actually hilarious. I'll actually show you this. I hope I don't knock everything over. I've got a list of I threw away my whiteboard.
Uh huh.
And then right after I threw away my whiteboard, I needed it again. And my sons have a target, an axe
I
target
love
practice
it.
thing. But I put a piece of cardboard and I write my ideas there, and it fell down and it scared the shit out of me earlier. But anyways, but he brings in our relationship where more of Amanda and I being more the A personality sales go get them. They bought. We're partners in saw.com and doing this, and he brought the side of the business of technological side of the business, and him and his personality is exactly what you said. Is it's filling in what I'm definitely not. And one of the biggest problems that I've had in business, and I think it's taken me a long time to figure this one out, is like when I would talk to a developer, I would explain the problem I'm having. I would tell him what I want or her what I want out of it. And then when they give it to me, a lot of the times what it is isn't what I wanted. And then I get mad and frustrated. But in the end, if you actually pick apart what occurred, the reason why it isn't the way I wanted is it's because the guy looking in the mirror, because I didn't do a good enough job explaining it and covering every single detail to make sure that that is exactly what I wanted. And what they do is they do what you told them to do, and they don't think of
To
the
the letter.
details,
They did it to the
right?
to the dot.
But I'm not good at mapping that out. I'm not good at doing every little thing. So I need a very good project manager, and I need someone like him to question me and ask those details that I don't, my brain just doesn't think that way. I look more like, if we do this, then we can get here, and we can
Is
here
to
and
have the
there. And it's like,
vision.
oh, yeah,
Is to have the
yeah,
vision.
yes, and get it there. And he, he's brought that into this business, and things have been going great as well. Not to say that it wouldn't be going as well if Amanda was still around. It's just kind of a different, a different partner,
It's a
and there's
different
I have
endeavor.
nothing bad to say about it. What'd you
No,
say?
it's a different endeavor. It's a different type of project in front of you. Now you're having a different approach.
Totally.
But you
Yeah.
see, these how you see, you said something really interesting, because now you started having that honesty to look at yourself and to say, this is where I'm lacking. Then
Yeah.
you know that direct channel of communication can be opened, and that's actually how things evolve.
It's true, and you gotta realize that I can't be like Hercules on one side of the boat with an oar, and then everybody else is on the other, and I'm
Yeah.
doing everything, and then there's a bunch of little ones here. Like, you need to delegate, you need to trust in people to do a good job, you need to give them those opportunities, and then you just need people to talk to and bring you back down to earth and tell you your ideas are stupid sometimes as well.
you, you know
Or that's not doable.
long time ago, and again, I'm talking 20, even before DomainsBot times, because Max and I started fiddling with the internet and creating websites and try to put online ideas since we were really 16 or something. And um, and we had this method that was really interesting. We would just get into a room, and if I had an idea, and I explain it, Max would spend 2 hours just trying to poke brutally as many holes as possible in my idea, and I would do the same with his. If it
Mhm.
survived, it may be worth exploring.
Ah, that's good.
It would be like a
I hope.
trial by fire in a way. Like, I'm just gonna try to throw everything I can to just destroy your idea. If it's still standing, it has some legs.
Yeah. When I managed a sales team of 50 salespeople, and one of them would come to me and say, I think we should buy this product, right? And we would use this technology to do this. And I'd be like, okay. So what I would do is I would write it down in my little notebook, and I would say, well, we'll look into it. And I wouldn't say a word back to that salesperson on purpose. And I would wait. And a lot of the times they never came back again and asked again. And that, to me, tells you that it isn't as mission and critical as they think. It was just important that day to have it. And then, but if other salespeople start coming over and saying, hey, I was working with John and he's using this widget, he showed me this widget, I really want it. Then all of a sudden it's time to maybe have a demo. Maybe it's time to start looking into pricing. Maybe it's time to start
Correct.
seeing how they're using it, and then you start implementing it, or you don't, you get to that point as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm guessing that on a daily basis, your search algorithm that people are using on registrars and hosting companies and places like that is probably used millions of times a day. Is that fair?
Yes.
Fair to say?
Yes.
Millions of searches. Okay. Do you think if you took the daily search volume
Hmm.
and maybe you had it trailing let's say the S&P 500 or the stock market or the global economy based on location, do you think that it would possibly follow stocks but delayed? I just feel So from my point of view and the way I'm looking at the stock market and the way things are going right now in the United States is like we've just broken the all-time
Mm-hmm.
high and for the size of the market, okay? But there are a handful of stocks that are really performing exponentially well, making it look a lot better than really what it is right now
As
because a lot of
there's
other stocks are
Nvidia that
flat
has
or declining.
exploded to
Yeah, which is pulling up everything else, right? And other stocks that are similar to that company are also getting, are going up. And then just in general, I don't have all these specifics. But like, we don't have the explosiveness of registrations. And, I'm an investor in .link and we're relatively flat for new registrations this year.
hmm
Despite doing a lot of partnerships and going out there and doing a lot of biz dev and hitting the streets, it's relatively flat. It's not the same growth we were getting before. So what does that tell me? If registrars aren't getting a lot of new registrations
hmm
or losing
hmm
registrations, then the searches must be less than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because there's less people wanting, there's less demand. So that means there's less new business ideas or new products or services. So even though we're looking at a stock market that is reaching all-time
hmm
highs, we're actually, as an economy, I would think your search volume would be a metric that people should potentially be looking at. And if pegged in a certain way, you'd probably be surprised as to what you'd see. Have you ever thought about
So
that?
it could be eventually, but there are two important considerations to make. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is that even if we wanted to, we cannot, let's say, simply because one of the characteristics of our service is that our customer searches are our customers. And this is a very important part because the reason why we have a paid there is a service, a paid service that we provide to our customers is because we cannot touch that data. And believe me, across the years, there has been a lot of people saying, hey, is there a way that we can get a hold of X registrars logs or something like
Well,
that?
I wouldn't say I'm not saying X registrars and,
No,
and,
but
and giving out business intelligence.
even in aggregate.
Even in aggregate, you don't
But
want to know.
but with that said, there is a because there are a bunch of other registrars, and especially the let's say the resellers that use kind of the self-service product, can provide us with some data. We did an interesting analysis. Is actually in our blog. Is actually on DomainsBot blog. It was a massive analytics work done by Emiliano in seeing how the behavior, especially post pandemic, has changed over time. Has changed be it during the pandemic and post pandemic. Obviously, we're
Yeah,
coming out of the pandemic, and that has had a massive impact. Back in those days when we were all enclosed in our houses, we were registering and searching for domain names like nobody's business. Today,
yeah,
obviously, the thing has changed, right? And we didn't even look at the United States by itself. We looked worldwide. And
yeah,
obviously, there are places that have right now an economic outlook and an economic situation that is even more different from the one in the US.
hmm
With that said though, I think it's interesting to look at it because it could give you some indication of how active people is online, and nowadays how active people is online could be an indication on how active is people in general. And what I mean by active, not how much they run, how active their economic activities are. And this is definitely an interesting part. However, uh, I would say that more that for the big companies, it would give you a great outlook on how the small businesses outlook is looking. Because who searches for a domain name? If I'm an investor and I'm trying, for example, to bet on, new keywords or new terms or new technologies or things like that, okay, yeah, that's definitely a thing. But I
yeah.
would look at it maybe from another angle, which is how much people is starting a little shop around the block.
That's what I'm trying to say is that the U.S. is built on small business. People from the outside looking in think it's Microsoft and Amazon, but the
Is
reality
the
is
small
you
businesses.
drive through the United States, it's all small business. You drive on the roads, it's all small businesses driving
True,
around.
true. Well, in
It's
that case,
all,
actually, yes, it definitely could. It definitely could be,
yeah,
could be an indicator. But if actually you want that answer, I would say that I wouldn't even look directly just at the search volume, but I would use
yeah.
something like our data to actually say what's happening. In the last year, how many restaurants have popped into existence? Where are they based? What are the things that they're selling? How many florists? How many dentists? How many,
Yeah. I mean,
like maybe not directly looking only from the domain search side, but I would actually use the direct metrics, which by the way our data has, because it's all in
yeah.
there, but is to see how many of these businesses are popping into existence and even how many of them are dying out, to see actually how the whole economic activity is expanding or not.
Hmm. But then you look at companies like Linktree
Uh-huh.
that added millions of users in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were a registrar that pulled that off to 20 million registrations in two
They would be
years,
pretty big.
they would be queuing the band the moment that anyone from that registrar walked into ICANN. The red carpet would come out, and the other registrars would be like surrounding them, asking for autographs, because that would be the greatest, business person ever to walk through ICANN to be able to grow at that
That's
speed,
true.
right?
That's true.
But they really did it. They really did that. That's almost like a registrar, but it also shows that there could be more of like a cultural change where people aren't as worried about the domain name, and they're just getting their link in bio and they're putting it on their Instagram or their Facebook business, and they're saying, okay, that works too.
These,
And I don't have to go with the web builder and all the bullshit that comes with it. And small businesses might be going in that direction as well, more
you
towards link in
see, you
bio.
see, there's an important part. There's an important part actually. I have discussed this topic with a bunch of people in the industry. Incidentally, even the guys at .link, um, about the fact that there is one important piece of knowledge, let's say, that has to be maybe shared and made understood better by the wider industry, by the wider market, which is the fact that with link in bio, with your Instagram, with your Facebook page, you
Mm-hmm.
are giving control of your web presence to someone else.
Oh, totally.
And this is an
Yeah.
important part. There was an analysis I did a long time ago about streamers, for example, right? Now, the streamer community depends on the web presence. If I'm a streamer, either it's about video games or whatever it is, uh, you know, um, you need to have control of the place where your audience come in. If your audience only knows you from Twitch/Panda or YouTube/Panda or Facebook/Panda, nothing wrong with it. Or even Link3./Panda, nothing wrong with it. But just bear in mind, you are anyway at the mercy of them. With your domain name and with your web presence, even if you have to go through your web building bullshit. And let's be honest, building a website these days is not the same thing as I used to do in 1995 when you
Oh
had to
God, no.
to, code it in HTML by yourself.
No, no
But
way.
but even in that, it at least gives you control. And I have seen countless streamers, or YouTubers make a wrong move and just get erased from existence. And the thing is that obviously, you might argue, you know what, it's worth the risk because I don't want to have the hassle to register a domain name or to renew it once a year. But let's be honest, if your Twitching business or streaming business or your activity online is going good, it's really a relatively small price to pay.
Yeah. Well, I know that like Joe Rogan was on all YouTube, and he got a warning because they were saying that he was talking about fake news when he was talking about the vaccinations and things like that. So he started to get worried that he was going to get his channel shut down, and then Spotify picked him up. And he still puts his episodes on YouTube, but not the full. He gives you shorts, but he's left there and he has more control. But he's a juggernaut, and that's a whole different, whole
Obviously
different
you
animal.
are
But
you are talking about maybe one of the most important podcasts right now even in the world, like that he has a huge audience, I'm not familiar with his numbers, but I know for a fact that he's really big. So obviously in his case, it's it's different, meaning that he already by himself has the power to then say, okay, I'm just gonna move here and move there, and he
yeah,
can even stay on Spotify and still be Joe Rogan. But the reality
yeah,
is that the moment that you have and the moment that you are known by, for example, your web presence, which could be even a domain name linked to a link 3, to a link, this is my Instagram, this is my thing. But you have the power the day that you switch to YouTube pages to change it and go to your new YouTube page, for example. This
hmm
already gives you much more control. You know, in the end, um, it really goes back down to the very old metaphor of what the domain name industry is. You are buying. Do you remember in the good old days when we were all younger that we used to say that a domain name is a piece of real estate in the internet?
I still do. Yeah,
Exactly. The thing is that when
yeah,
you are actually just, a guest at someone's house, obviously it's
yeah. They can throw you
different
out.
that actually saying, okay, I own my plot of land. It might be barren. It might have a beautiful house, a beautiful website on it, but it's my land. So at least I have
Yeah,
more control. If I'm a guest at someone's house, in Italy, I don't know if in the US is the same, but we have this say that a guest is like fish. After 3 days, it starts smelling bad. So
that's true.
so the thing is that is I would say that is one of the most important arguments that you would have but again, it's a problem of education, of education, of letting people understand that. And when it comes to new GTLDs, I think I used to use this metaphor a lot when talking with registries, is that right now, and for some maybe still the case, um, there is almost this veil of transparency, right? There, new GTLDs now, but it took 10 years for new GTLDs to be just part of everyone's daily life, right?
Yeah, I don't know why they call them new
Well, exactly,
anymore.
exactly.
It's
Well,
10.
well, in technology terms, 10 years might sound like
It's
an like
ancient.
an eternity, but the reality is that since you are touching one of the things that has touched society the most in the maybe last 1,000 years, which is the internet. Obviously, for as fast as technology goes, you have to give it time to people for that to sink in. Because remember, the internet is, yeah, Nvidia, Link 3, like this super technological, it's the edge of technology, is Facebook. But the internet is also a website of a pharmacy that is in a street corner in a tiny house in North Dakota, or is in a tiny Colombian town.
Or 6 Italians in
Oh,
Rome building a business, right?
you see, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah,
So the problem is that if it's true, one world, one internet, if it's also true that what it stands, what its work, what it's part of everyday life for Nvidia or for Microsoft or for DomainsBot or Sav.com has to be the same for the pharmacist in North Dakota, and that takes
yeah.
time. And again, I'm just making
Oh,
the
yeah.
example of North Dakota as a
Oh, yeah.
remote
Of course.
location, but this is the thing. Being Italian, maybe for me, I have the perception that North Dakota is very remote. But that's the point. Is that it's a process that takes time, and maybe people, even in the domain name industry, really underestimated how long it was gonna take. They really did.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
a lot of people back at that Beijing ICANN meeting, it was at the beginning of the new GTLD era. People were convinced, okay, I'm gonna getting out with my new brand new extension. I'm gonna make a trillion registration in the first 6 months. Good luck with that,
We
buddy.
thought we thought at Uniregistry when like .link was launched and Frank invested in 20 other GTLDs he had, that the numbers were going to be explosive. And they grew, but they grew not to the amount that he felt was a success, but they grew organically like a normal business. And they've continued to grow that way. Pretty a lot of them. I mean, some of them had some very good promos. Like XYZ did the penny a name, and then a lot of those names have renewed, and they have really done a wonderful job with that extension. But I think the majority of them have grown at a nice steady rip, doing what companies do, and they have campaigns and opportunities that work, but then the gold vein burns out and they're going to find a new one and they might dip and then get into other things and other opportunities come along. But, I think if you asked the total number of GTLDs 10 registrations 10 years in, I think even those that had the more conservative numbers, other than the haters, but those that had the more conservative numbers would still have been pretty high, from what people were expecting. But the demand wasn't there. And it's going to be interesting with the new round 3 years from now, or 2.5 years, really like 3 years from
Mm-hmm.
now, where there could be hundreds of new applications that come in and new extensions. And that's going to make your job a little harder of adding more options,
It's gonna make it
to
wider.
people.
I wouldn't say harder. I would actually say wider. Like now, it's gonna be maybe easier for us, for example, on the name suggestion side, to serve the public because now there's going to be either even much more availability, and there's going to be the possibility, and at least I pray to God actually that the new GTLD round is going to have very relevant strings. That is not just going to be like whatever I come up with in the morning and I just make a TLD out of it, but if the strings are relevant, it's going to be easier. There's going to be more availability and more relevancy. Because again, to me, my words on Beijing still stand true. Relevance.
But yes, you're absolutely right. But the thing is that every store you go into only has so much shelf space. And if it's a lot of bad extensions, as you can see in the list of GTLDs now that are listed publicly for sale, aren't getting the registrations because they're either not relevant, they're too long, the quality isn't there, whatever it is, or there's no commercial demand for it. And
It's
so
true.
the registrars aren't gonna have you put results of some crappy extension in there just because that name's available, because they know it's just not going to convert. Like, and your algorithm's going to learn from that it's a dud
Absolutely.
pretty quick,
It's
right?
gonna adapt,
So
it's gonna learn, and it's gonna adapt to see if the people is more receptive to this TLT. There is no logical reason for which we shouldn't show it. Obviously, in the moment that that TLT is relevant to the customer. So,
yeah.
ci vediamo dopo, amore. It's my daughter that is walking away. They're going to
Uh-oh.
piano lessons.
Oh, that's cute.
Hmm.
That's cute. So I'm going to ask you some questions here, some more questions.
Sure.
I got a bunch of them.
Shoot.
These are going to be short answers for you.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Remember, if there's one gift that didn't give me, it's actually synthesis. But I'm gonna try to do my
All right,
best.
you're going to try your
I'm
best.
gonna try.
Try your
I'll
best.
try my best.
Okay. All right. You've mentioned you're drinking white wine, but are you more of a red wine or a white wine kind of guy?
Honestly, white.
Or
I'm a
white?
white wine
Okay.
type of guy.
So then my next question was, would you like South American wine or Italian wine more?
Do you really need to
But
ask?
well, if it's white, it's probably the Italian anyway,
Exactly.
right? Because
No,
not a
in
whole lot
general,
of
I'm a huge fan of Italian whites.
Italian whites. That's your
Yeah.
favorite. Okay, what's your favorite grape?
I would say that
Is it a Bologna?
there was a, there one of the best white wines I've ever had was actually something that it's kind of weird because it was called Pinot Giallo, yellow Pinot.
Mm,
You are very used to Pinot Noir, so the black one
yes,
is
yes,
actually
yeah, and
a
Pinot
Pinot
Grigio as well.
Grigio,
Yes,
exactly. Pinot Giallo
yes.
was one of the best. I
I like
had
that
it
one.
very, very, very few times, and I'm a huge fan of the
How do you spell it? How do you spell it?
giallo, Giallo, which means yellow in Italian. And
Okay.
and my two, let's say, favorite wines are from the farthest northern part of Italy, which is right at border with Austria, which are the Müller Thurgau and the Gewürztraminer. There are two.
I'm surprised you get good wine from there because it's cold, in the winter
That's
and
actually what
it's
makes
mountainous.
them slightly sweeter and much more aromatic. Like
Okay.
they don't pack the same punch that, for example,
Yeah.
a red from Tuscany
Yeah.
would pack. They're much lighter.
Okay. All right. Next question. Have you ever had Chef Boyardee?
Sorry,
Have you ever had Chef Boyardee? It's American spaghetti in a can.
I am not entirely sure. It is possible, although I'm afraid that if I did, that would make my Italian citizen in jeopardy.
I think I think you would have loved it
No,
if
I'm
you
pretty
had
sure
that.
that it's great. It's just that, again, I have an Italian passport to defend.
Have you ever had Domino's pizza or Papa John's
I really.
or Sparrow or
So
any
I had
American?
actually a slice of what's the other famous American pizza chain? Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut.
I
Oh,
had
that's
it
garbage.
once in the Czech Republic in Prague, and once in Beijing. But both cases, it
In
was
Beijing.
in Beijing. It was out of necessity.
It was just you were starving and you needed something to eat, and that was it.
Yeah, and we were really running out of options. I was with Francesco Cetraro. He used to be at Affiliates for a very long time, and the thing is that he's the foodiest of the foodies that I've ever met in my life.
Oh,
It's like if it's not Michelin star, I'm not eating. And he was so desperate in Beijing that he says, "Dude, I even know where a McDonald's in Beijing are."
so he was eating Chinese Sparrow.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's the lowest of the
Yeah,
low right there. Yeah. There
that's
you
kind of
go.
how bad it can get.
All right, last question. What do you think about if you came to my house and I was making pasta and I broke it in half
The
when
spaghetti.
I put it in the pot? Yeah, the spaghetti.
S-
How would you feel about that? Would you be bothered?
More than bothered. I would just politely try to
Would you?
explain to you why it's a bad idea, because people think that that is just a quirk, but there's a reason for it.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the reason?
So every shape of pasta is meant to have a sauce. And the reason why that pasta
Okay.
has a shape is because it works better with that sauce. The reason why spaghetti works so well, for example, with sauces like tomato sauce or carbonara or matriciana, all of those, is because you're just giving it more surface for the sauce to stick to. So the
Mhm.
thing is that when you cut them in half, you are actually cutting in half the your bite, your chew when you roll them.
Okay.
So it's not that Italians get mad at it for like
You're just like, why?
no, there's just a reason. Like the reason why in Italy you can find 500 shapes of different shapes of pasta is not because we didn't have anything
Mhm.
to do that afternoon that we decided to invent them. Is because every pasta is supposed to have to go with the sauce. The rigatoni. It's called the rigatoni because riga means a stripe, and they have all those stripes in there. It's just to increase the surface area to actually have the sauce stick, but they have that shape so the bites of stuff can get into the tube. So when you eat it, you actually have a bite of the three things together.
There we go. I
Is
like it. I
is
like
that
it.
easy? The most hated cut of pasta in Italy, or the least used, is actually the smooth rigatoni or penne. They don't have the stripes, they're just smooth. And those, for example,
Okay.
are used with the fish. With fish dishes, because obviously you want to on a fish pasta dish to actually have the pasta play kind of a little tuned down role, because since you're using a quality ingredient like fish, you want that one actually to shine as much as
I
possible.
got it. Yeah, so you want yes, I get
Everything
that.
has a reason, my friend. Everything has a reason.
Fusilli is my favorite.
I fusilli
What
buoni.
kind of what is that for?
Fusilli,
Usually
for
just I usually
example,
register
because the
the
fusillo has an enormous surface area for its volume, an
yes.
enormous
Yes.
pesto. Fusilli al pesto.
Pesto
With
all
pesto,
the
you
way.
cannot go wrong. Or even a tomato sauce. Even with a tomato sauce, you are actually just giving the possibility to the sauce to shine because it attaches to it. You need to give it surface area to attach to when you have a sauce, which is obviously inherently liquid.
Hmm. And how's the Italian food in Colombia?
Well, actually, oddly enough, now you have access to much more things. For example, compared to 20 years ago, like there are restaurants, even in my town. I don't live in the capital. I don't live in Bogota. I live in Pereira, which is kind of the capital of the coffee zone of the country. And it's a million people, like between 750, almost a
Oh,
million people. Uh,
I'm gonna I'm gonna have you bring me a pound of coffee next time I see you.
absolutely, absolutely.
Oh
And
man, yeah, that's good
the
stuff.
thing is that here now we even have a couple of restaurants that are actually owned and operated by Italians that move here, and you can
Uh huh.
find Italian pasta, you can find Italian parmesan, you can find Italian olive oil, so you have access to the products now. 20
Hmm.
years ago, I remember when I was a kid, and my Colombian friends would ask me, "Oh, can you cook us pasta?" And it would turn like very very bad. Is because I didn't have access to the ingredients. At the end of the day, Italian cuisine, it's all about the ingredients. We don't cook, we ensemble, we craft. But something, and it's true. It's true. Like think about the fact that a pasta dish actually it's traditionally made in the same time that it takes the pasta to cook, which is maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah,
carbonara can be assembled in 10 minutes, 11 if you're slow, but that's pretty much it. It's not cooking, it's assembling. You just need to know how to do it.
yep. I got it. That's great. So we talked about search. We talked about your business intelligence tool. And before while we wrap this up, because you usually try to keep these for an hour and a
I
half
told you
now,
that
and I think
synthesis was
you're
not a
Friday.
gift for me. I warned you a bit.
But you were also worried that you wouldn't know what to talk about today. You were saying so. Come on.
Jeff, you gotta understand something. In Italy, we have a say. It's better to keep your mouth shut and give people the doubt that you're an idiot than opening and give them confirmation. So,
Oh yeah. And how do you say that in Italian?
what's the traditional way? È meglio star zitti e lasciare, com'è? Lasciare il sospetto che sei un cretino rispetto a aprirla e togliere ogni dubbio. Something like that. I don't remember exactly the say. Like there's a traditional way of saying it, but right now it's kind of, I don't know. I
I
just
got
lost
it.
it for a moment.
So registrars can use you. A current business can do it if they're doing for brand protection, CCTLDs, and scanning the internet for matching domains to their business to see
Correct.
what ones are registered and what's on those names and threat scores for what's happening on those
Correct.
names.
Correct.
And then additionally, are there any other products that like a domainer, because there's a lot of domain investors that listen to us that might find value in what you
I
have
would
to
say
offer?
I would say that Pandalytics could be an interesting research tool. Actually, it is in fact a great research tool even for domain investors. And the reason why I say this is because we search the entire internet, all domain names in existence. We crawl them, we analyze it, we take all this information, we structure it, and we make it available. And every domainer has his own secret sauce, has his own way of looking at domain names to understand if this niche is working, this other niche is working, to even place bets on the future. And understanding what is the situation today, it's definitely one important factor into that equation. If you are a domainer that you are, for example, specialized in domain names of a specific niche, understanding how many domain names there are out there, how many websites, real websites that are producing revenue about that industry are in there, where are they, what language do they speak, and all of this can actually allow you to say, okay, now I'm going to go and get these domain names to enrich my portfolio.
So if someone would dump like, I think one of the things that a lot of domainers kind of fight with is obviously they're a lot of times are handcuffed by what's coming on the drop, and a lot of people just buy expired names. So if they were going to take a list of expired names and they would use Pandalytics to find things like diamonds in the rough. Like it's obvious when a oneword.com expires, and it's easy to look at perfect two-word.coms if you're going to get those. But it's finding those that it's obscure and the majority of your colleagues, it's just going to go over their head, and these guys buy it in the closeout section for $25 or $50 or
Exactly.
$100, and then they can dump it for $5 within a year or 2 years. That, and you think Pandalytics has the ability to uncover possibilities like
To
that so
uncover
they can pick those.
possibility, to understand the sizes of markets, understand the sizes of niches, right? All these things, can be easily understood with Panalytics, and the main part is with the fact that at least you would know that what you're looking at is really all domain names in existence. For GTLDs,
Yeah.
authoritatively, for CCTLDs, we are pioneers with our techniques to actually have the biggest coverage of CCTLDs possible. So
Yeah.
this is, for example, on the domain investor side. For registrars, obviously, domain suggestion and understand and our data, whatever Pandalytics or Insights, whatever service you want to look at it, is the fact of understanding what are my customers doing. What are they buying from the outside that I'm not even aware of?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that I may be offering as a service, like it's part of my product offering, and it's a perfect match for them, and I haven't connected the dots. By giving it a third party from the outside perspective, you are able to look at this. And for registries, obviously, is understanding who is using my domain names, what are they doing, what are they talking about with these domain names, and what is the information that I can get to position better my TLD. I have a couple of examples that are actually common knowledge. .me, when they started analyzing their TLD, and they realized that the programmers and startuppers were using their TLD, they actually got their strategy by looking really closely at their customer base, and they decided, okay, this is actually how I want to position it. And they have done brilliant things, uh, organized conferences about new technologies, about startups, because it was their customer base telling this is why we appreciate them. It's never a
Yeah.
top bottom thing. Like I decided that my TLD is for this, you know?
Yeah. Well, the people decide in the end. You can say whatever you want,
Exactly.
and then it's just what people
Eh,
are doing. And I think from a registry standpoint, which a lot of people don't realize is that they do promos, try to get as many registrations as they can. The problem is when you sell names at a penny or a dollar, $2 or whatever on a big promo, the renewals aren't very high. So you're hoping the next year renews at $20 or $15 or whatever. And if people don't use the name, then your odds are very slim. They're probably going to renew it unless they make a mistake and it just
and it
renews,
just
auto renews
renews
on them. But if it's
automatically.
not being used, you're in trouble. Yeah.
This
So if
is
you look at so you could scan .link and you can say 80% of the string are businesses that are using it.
correct.
15% are investors and 5% is unknown.
Correct.
So then when we look at our projections, we can say, okay, these are probably not going to renew. And this is what we're looking at next year for projections and revenue. And that's a big help too.
Furthermore, before those
Mm-hmm.
domains drop, you would look at those domain names and say, in conjunction, for example, with the registrar, what are those activities, those promotions, those packages, or those messages that we can convey in order to stimulate at least part of that customer base, part of those domain names that are still inactive, that are still dormant, into turning it into something. Because the moment they turn into
Yeah.
something, your chances of having that domain name renew, go to the roof. So it's
So
really
you,
being also predictive sorry, not predictive, that's the wrong word. Preemptive in, say, before they drop or before they're about to drop, I'm gonna try to do something.
yeah. And then you can potentially guess what they're going to do with it.
Absolutely.
And so you could then say, hey, this isn't being used. How about a free link in bio coupon to this company? Or you do whatever to get it renewed. Or they're using it, and then you can say, your renewal's coming up.
Correct.
or something. And yeah,
I'm
exactly.
going I'm gonna
Okay.
tell you something that I've always said about Panalytics and about our data in general. That I know is gonna sound weird, but I really believe that, and at least everyone that has used our data has confirmed my weird saying. The biggest limitation of our data is the creativity of the person sitting in front of it,
Uh-huh.
because it's so deep, and we try to be as complete as possible because of all the different data points that we collect. What we're trying to do, or at least what is the one of the most important uses of it, is to paint a picture. So every single data point is not um, is not the entire picture, but every data point, every angle that we analyze a domain name, it could be, let's look at an email, if they're using an SSL, what type of SSL, what type of CMS are they using? Are they using a blogging system? Are they using an e-commerce platform? If yes, which one? All these things are different strokes of brush of a painting that I'm trying to paint. And that painting
Hmm.
is the face of the customer standing behind that domain name. So looking at the e-commerce might be an eyebrows. Looking at if they're using analytics might be just the shape of the nose. But every one of these things, not by themselves, but all together, they paint you a picture. And these, for registries and registrars alike, is really important because the moment that you know that picture, then you know what to do next.
Yeah, and a domain investor could do the same
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. For them, let's say that the customer is not a customer, but in that case, you are painting
Well, they're the
a
customer.
type, a type.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is my industry, this is my niche, this is my market, this is what this domain name can give me. So it can really be. This is why I say it's really a matter of creativity. And obviously, one thing, and I would hate myself for not saying this. Sorry, I'm taking so long. Is that
Yeah, it's been great.
one of the things that we really pride ourselves, Emiliano and I, and all the DomainsBot team, is that
How many? Oh, go
oh
ahead.
no,
Sorry.
we're just 8 at this moment. We're very tiny.
8. Okay.
Uh, is uh, is just that we really want to be an R part of the process. We're not just going to give you a username and a password, say, okay, log into Panalytics and now you're off to the races. No, it doesn't work like that. We want to be, and we put to each one of our customers. I personally spend with each one of our customers the time to understand what it is that they do, what it is that that our data can help, and we really put ourselves out there, as part of what we do. It's not a joke when I say that when you work with Pandalytics, you get a piece of the panda because of the fact. No, and you can ask it around at all the companies that work with us. It
Yeah.
can be as let's look at the data together. Let's find innovative as ideas together. Let's try to find what is in the data that can really be changing for you. And to the point to say, if the way that you're doing things, the data can help, we will be part of that process and we will make you more data driven.
Mhm.
And it's a process. But the thing is that it's never a username and a password or a newsletter. Is you talk to Daniel, you talk to Emiliano, and we put each one of our perspectives into the process. uh, you know when we kind of restyled ourselves, one of the different sentences that we say is that with the human part of data. And you never have to forget that everybody says, yeah, data is the new oil, right? Yeah, that's true, but oil is go if data is oil, for your car you don't need oil, you need gasoline, and those are two different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Every time I look at data, it's always different than what I thought it was going to be. The outcomes are always different, and it's funny, and you get so stuck in your ideas that you totally believe it yourself, and then you look at the numbers and you're just like, whoa.
Hang on a
And I've
minute.
had those moments
This is
so
different.
many times. like we've done different landing pages on the website. We've tried different. We had a person who designed Viagra landing pages, so we were thinking to ourselves, you know what? This guy targets men in their middle ages. Mostly in the United States, Canada, UK, different places like that. That is the perfect landing page. And then we had another one that we had, and another, and someone who built it differently. And it's kind of a strange looking one. I'm like, this is kind of stupid looking. And that one converts better than the Viagra one. But you would think that, Pfizer pumping Viagra to middle-aged people, having millions of people go to this landing page, would have converted the best, because we thought that that's the target. And obviously I was wrong, and we don't use that one like we used to. So it's just, there's always interesting data that comes up in whatever you do. So how can anybody contact you, or do you want them to just go to the website and ask for a demo because you have demos on there,
Absolutely.
ways to
You can
contact
come to
you? What do you got?
DomainsBot. There's a very Italian email address that people can contact us directly, which is ciao@domainsbot.com. But my email address, daniel@domainsbot.com, emiliano@domainsbot.com. You can contact us directly. We would be more than happy, to see if we can help you, let's say, in being more data aware and taking advantage of this knowledge to really make a difference, because at the end of the day, that's what's all about. If we don't make a difference, if
Absolutely.
we don't make a difference, why are we here, right?
I
It's like, why are you
hear
showing
you.
up at
I
ICANN
mean,
meetings if you don't make a difference?
right.
You should be home. And that's kind of what we try to do, and we really do it
Absolutely.
with a lot of heart and a lot of passion. I can tell you that.
It is, and working with you and seeing you in action and hearing about you from our colleagues, what you're seeing here in the video is what you're going to get from him and his team. So he totally means it. So, but thanks for your time. I
Absolutely.
hope everybody enjoyed this one. I certainly did. I think this is a great show, and I'm really happy that you came. So I
And I
appreciate
apologize again for the fact that God really didn't give me synthesis. In a world that is coming so focused and synthetic, I'm kind of the exact opposite.
it. And I love it. And there's nothing wrong with it at all. All right.
Thank,
Thanks, my
thank
friend.
you so much, Jeff. It's been really, really a pleasure being here, and I'm glad I was able to kind of share my story.
There we go.
I'll talk to you soon.